Hello and welcome back. So I made this model for school, and the geometry I found out was really hard to texture with Surforge. So what I ended up doing was I used Surforge within Unity to create something called a texture atlas, and then I take that into Blender and line up the UV coordinates with the texture atlas. And I like the way it turned out. So this is the animation I made for school. I go to EWU, and so I'm calling this the EWU bot. And let me just line up the camera. Alright, so that's enough. So it looks pretty decent. I stayed true to the school colors, and everything looks pretty good within Unity. So the way I did this, first of all, let's open up a project with Surforge. So I have an empty project here, not too much going on. I went to Window, Surforge, and then I'm going to click on New Texture. And then I'm going to click on this Y gizmo to go into Top View. And so the first thing I wanted to do was choose a color scheme that I like. So I wanted to stay with the default material sets that come with Surforge. So in order to see all of those, I essentially just created a space over here, enter to complete that polylasso object, and then I'm just going to click and then shift and control click to break this geometry into pieces. And I want about 10 pieces. And then I'm going to hit escape to release the polylasso, and then just select these and hit the number keys 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and we'll make the background 0. And now space to render. And now we can see all of the colors that are included within this steel and blue paint material set. And now I'm just going to scroll through this. And I think I ended up sticking with steel and red paint for my EWU bot. Back here. And now for this, why don't we choose I like that one a lot. I like this one too. I think I'm just going to stick with yellow painted metal stripes. That's pretty much my go-to for these tutorials. And then I'm going to switch, I think this was 1, so I'm going to switch 1 and 0. Render that again. Alright. So now I have a material, and let's just create a basic decal. I created that eagle, but for this I'll just create something very simple. That'll work. And while we're at it, I created that with the polylasso. I deselected the polylasso tool, and now I'm going to click on this, and that changes the selected pattern. Space to render again. Alright, so now we've got some interesting colors and some interesting shapes. And we're just going to hit Export Maps. And I'm going to put that in Models, Robot, Materials, and I'll just call it Robot 1. Alright, so when that finishes, we should end up with something here. Robot 1. Alright, so this is our physically based rendering material. It's using the 6 maps that Surforge created. And so now to map this on, essentially we're going to take this this texture atlas and map this onto our object. And now, we have like a normal map and a height map and occlusion and like emission. But we don't need to bring those into Blender. All we're going to use is the albedo map. And when we change the UV coordinates of our model, all the other maps are going to follow suit. I don't know if that makes sense yet, but I'll show you what I mean. So when I take this model, if I hit U, Smart UV Project, it ends up creating something like this. And the way these islands are created, this is really not ideal for Surforge. It's just this is just like impossible to texture. And so you could, if you wanted to, you could like hit W and then mark seams and try to break this out differently. But it seemed like more work than it was worth for me. So what I did is, let's go back to the default view. And I'm going to first hide the bone mesh. H to hide. Go back into object mode. Now all I have is this model, and he's in a few different pieces. There's one main piece for the body, and then this helmet piece is separate, so I'll just move that out of the way. So now we want to take these textures and map them onto this object. So to do that, I'm going to essentially I'm just going to start with the chest, and actually go back into UV mode. And in this view, I'm just going to find this albedo here. So I'm going to click Show in Inspector. That opens up this window. I'm going to take that link, go back to Blender, find that folder, and choose albedo. Whoops. Alright, so that's still not going to show up on the model, I don't think. And that's because if we're using Cycles Render, we can just go to the node editor. So I'm just hitting Control and left until I get to here, and I'm just going to choose Robot Albedo. So now that's assigned to the material node. Now let's go back, and now you can see we have the new material on the guy. It doesn't look good yet though, so why don't we just take this piece by piece. I'm going to tab into edit mode here, and then select a vertex and hit Control L. Now I have the whole chest selected, and I'm just going to hit U and project from view. And what that did is, you can see before, the Smart UV Unwrap broke this object into a bunch of different pieces, and then when it tries to do the mapping, each of these different pieces is on a different part of our texture atlas. But if I hit U and project from view, essentially it's just whatever angle the camera is seeing this from, it's just going to flatten that out. It's essentially, if you imagine a heavy weight going out from the camera into the model and just smashing it up against a wall, it's essentially just flattening out the chest. And so we could do it from this angle, and now you can see exactly what we have here is this view. And so I want this directly head on, so I'm going to hit 1 and 5 to make sure I'm in front ortho view. Now I'm going to hit U and project from view. And then I'm just going to go over here, and while the mouse is in this space, I can still use the same moving and scaling shortcuts. So G to move, S to scale. The only difference is now there's only X and Y rather than X, Y, Z. And so I'm just going to find something that looks interesting. S to scale, tab out of edit mode, and already it makes more sense as a model. It doesn't look good, but you can see how this would be practical. And we could also just take a piece of the chest, and I can't see the lines. Let's go into wireframe. No, that doesn't help. There we go. C. So I just hit C to activate the paint select. And my topology is really bad here because I used decimate on a sculpted chest piece, and so I have a lot of like weird shapes. So maybe that idea of moving apart a different piece is a bad idea. Anyway, I'm rambling, so why don't we just move ahead with texturing this. So I like the way the black chest looks. I don't like his legs right now, so I'm just going to tab into edit mode, Control L to select this leg piece, U to project from view, and then I'm going to move this around until I have something I like. And like right now, I don't like how this is on the inside of his leg, but it might look interesting if it was on the outside. So while I'm in edit mode, I'm just going to move the mouse over to this side, R to rotate, and then 180. Flipped it over, and that looks better. So why don't we do the same thing on the other side? So now I'm going to shift, right click over here, Control L. Now I have both legs selected. And I need to actually unwrap the right leg. So select that, unwrap, project from view. And now we have similar shapes for each of these legs, and I can actually just select them both and line up the shapes. So I just want this one. Did that just duplicate? What happened there? Oh, okay, so whoops. Control L, A to select all, move, Control L. I like being able to see both of them at the same time. That way I can perfectly match them up. So now I'm going to use B for box select, grab this whole thing, G to rotate, S to scale, and rotate, R 180. And I think that they're actually being mirrored right now. So I can scale them across the x-axis by -1. So that would be SX -1. And I had my mouse in the wrong view, so I accidentally scaled it. I scaled the model instead of scaling the UV coordinates. So moving the mouse back over here, SX -1. And that's starting to look better. So now we have the exact same shape and the exact same UV mapping. And you know, that might actually look better if it's not symmetrical. Sometimes you just have to play with it. Alright, so now the problem with doing it this way is whatever you do on the front now is going to be mirrored on the back, because we essentially just flattened this out. And it looks fine there, but the helmet is one example where it probably won't look fine. And I actually kind of like the way that looks, but just as an example, U to unwrap, project from view, and now I'm just going to take this, A to select all, and move it to here. And you can see when it mirrors over, it creates these circles. And I don't like that at all. So we have other options for unwrapping. Like we could do like a project bounds. We could do a cube projection. That might be better. I wasn't able to find a very good solution the first time I tried this. U, cylinder projection, A. I think that looks better. And now you'll notice right here the texture is extremely warped. I mean, not warped, but stretched. Like there's not a lot of detail in that texture. And so if we want to fix that, we can actually just scale this up. And now each UV island is getting a lot more texture space. Alright, what else should we do here? I kind of like the way the arms look. The legs look pretty good. I think the chest needs more detail, and I still don't like the helmet. So why don't we unwrap this a different way? Let's try follow active quads. And that did not work. I've never gotten that one to work, but I think you start with one square selected, and then it wraps around from there. Light map pack, unwrap. Smart unwrap. Alright, that'll do. I'm not happy with the helmet, but you're probably getting bored. So why don't I go back into object mode, bring this down. Oh yeah, and then while we're at it, one other thing that I did to this model is, if I go back into the default view, when I have this guy selected, go back to texture, you can see the black mapping that we're doing is not being applied to this visor. And the reason that's happening is because A, to deselect everything, C, to paint select. Essentially what I did is went around and selected all these faces here using the paint select. And then I went into this materials tab, and I have two different materials. And so for the face, I essentially, you just click the plus, create a second material, and then whatever geometry you have selected, you can click on assign. And it's gonna now I have two material slots. There's one material slot for the body and one for the face. And so when I go back into Unity, that allows me to let's get some materials. That allows me now to drag one material onto the body and then a separate one onto his face, because there are two material slots here. And yeah, I mean, right now there's obviously two material slots because I'm using two different skin mesh renderers. But specifically within one skin mesh renderer, or within any renderer in Unity, if you assign multiple materials here to the different pieces of geometry, that's going to allow you to drop in multiple material elements. So that's a really nice trick. It does add a little bit to the rendering cost. So if you're trying to optimize your game for mobile, it is more efficient to use one material slot. But again, if you're doing this for PC, it's not going to make any difference really. And it probably won't make that much of a difference, even if it's mobile. So I think that's about it. The general idea is to create the atlas in Surforge, something like this. Go back into go back into Blender, and just in the UV editing tool, just sort of like move pieces around, and that's going to change the UV coordinates on your model. The problem here is now when I have everything, this is not pretty. So this would be really hard to texture on its own after this point. So you would probably want to go back in and recreate the UV coordinates using something like Smart UV Project if you wanted to texture it differently afterward. But this is it's kind of intuitive and it's kind of fun. I enjoy moving these islands around a lot more than I enjoy trying to paint directly on the model. When you're painting on the model, it feels really imprecise, but when you're painting on these islands, you can get a lot more precision with the move and scale tools. So why don't we just take this back into Unity, save as EWU bot. I'll just call it bot 2. And I think you guys are going to be impressed, because right now all we're using is the albedo, but we should be able to see it with all of the other PBR slots as well. Unity froze because it was importing. So now that we have the bot 2, we can just drop that in. I have to zoom in on him. I'm going to go into orthographic view. That way I can rotate around him. And now we're just going to take robot 1, drop it on the model. And it looks kind of funny because I forgot that this top one is emissive, and I think this bottom one is emissive too. So by putting UV coordinates on these emissive spots, we're actually seeing those from the emissive texture here. So I don't really like the way that looks with the emissive texture. So when you do this, just keep in mind where you put these emissive slots. When we created the atlas, I probably should have just put them in one corner, because now we're getting like a bright orange here and a bright blue here, which is not what I wanted at all. I do like the way the reflection is, so why don't we just go into the Robot 1 material, and I'm just going to remove the emissive texture. So just I just clicked on this button here, and I'm just going to go to none, drop that out, and set this to 0, 0, and then yeah, that's not bad. Also, we don't have a material on the visor or the earpieces yet, so I can just drop that on there. We probably should create a custom material for that. Why don't we just say visor, make this black, alright, that's good enough. And I'll just drop the robot albedo, or I mean I'll just drop the robot 1 material on the earpieces as well. Alright, so now that we're back in Unity, we have all of our maps back together. We have specular, height maps, ambient occlusion, what else? Normal maps, and all of these are working together to create better shadows, better lighting, better reflections. Yeah, and honestly, I think this was kind of a bad example of the technique. I'm not happy with the way it turned out. So I'll probably make another one of these videos in the future. But I hope that you guys enjoyed the workflow. I hope that you see the usefulness of creating something with Surforge and then mapping that onto your model in Blender. So hopefully this wasn't completely useless. I'll see you guys next time.